Okay, you've been a successful yard. But what would be the biggest problems faced by trainers at the moment?
Well, undoubtedly the labour situation is a huge thing, and I can remember reading from I think it's the NTF produced some figures that um, probably originated from the BHA, but they thought that the industry was 500 work riders short, and that was 4 or 5 years ago, and it's got worse from there, and obviously with Brexit and everything, it's going to be more and more difficult. It's difficult to get people who are actually get lads that are horsemen. It can actually you need to ride a horse in a certain way, get him to work at home, get him up in your hands and to work. And so many young people, the way you can't, most of them are born to do that, and it's very difficult to get somebody, send them to racing school and get them, and then for them to, in a year later, to turn out to ride a horse properly. But I've got strong views on the labour situation. I think the worst thing that was ever done was by the many years ago, just after the war, they banned pony racing in this country, and the powers that be, in their infinite wisdom, decided that it was not. It was a bad policy. And when I was growing up, my brother and I, we weren't allowed to ride in pony races, and there wasn't organised pony racing. They banned it, and it was just illegal flapping. But if you were involved in that, you were banned. You couldn't get involved in racing proper. And for years they kept that the same. So all the labour came from Ireland, and the jockeys came from Ireland. Comparatively recently, they restarted pony racing, which I applaud. They should have done it. They should never have banned it. And since then, we've had the Bowen brothers, the Tristan Davis brothers, and it's been a good source of not only jockey talent, but I maintain for every Sam Tristan Davis or every Sean Bowen that you produce, there'll be a lot who don't make it as jockeys, but they still get the bug and they still get a skill and they want to work in racing. And it's those sort of people you need. And I commend them for actually restarting it, although it should never have been stopped. And I think, to say, oh well, just brush it off. I think, it's such a shame that happened, that they stopped it. But anyway, we move on, and that, I think on that score they should actually encourage pony racing, and even more than they do now. It's very popular at the local point to point. We sponsor the one of the days ponies racing up there. My brother and I do it, and it's getting bigger and bigger. And it's great to see the children. Boys love excitement. To get boys involved in horses, you have to have a thrill, get a thrill out of it, and just something like that will draw boys into it. On the other side of it, I think I maintain that we should be rewarding people who work full time in the industry. There's so many now. I mean, we have a clocking in system, a thumbprint clocking in system here, and we have to because we've got so many part timers, and they're doing a few hours here and a few hours there, and it is impossible to control it. So with a clocking in system, we know when they work. But if you just think, if we could convert a proportion of those part timers into full timers, then that we're getting more labour out of them. And I think the way to do that will be to reward people who have worked 12 months continuously in the industry, in a yard, for them to have a cash payment December the 1st. I know everyone say, well, where does that come from? It comes from within the industry. Maybe only have to do it for smaller yards, maybe the big yards got to do it themselves. But it could come from within the industry. There's far too much waste in racing. Even yesterday, I had a young apprentice was being signed up in the yard, and a lovely girl from the BHA came down and went through all the forms and procedures. I was asked to sign my name, and I had to give a mug shot I forget what the term they called it, with the signature. My picture was printed on the form. Every time I signed my name, I signed it with my finger, and that went on for ages. The time is money. And it's things like that. What was the necessity to do that? Why can't you just sign a document at the end of it the once, or get your picture on it if you have to? But it took that girl at least half an hour longer. There's one operation. You know, that's where an efficiency can be made. And also, and this is very, very contentious, I do maintain, why are the powers that be based in London? If Weatherby's can be at Wellingborough, why can't the BHA move out so that the staff don't have to be paid so much to live there? It all comes out of racing, and I strongly believe that I'm not sure what it costs to run the BHA now, but they should do it for 80% of what it costs to run racing, and that's all the industry can afford. But we have to reward the people who work full time to keep them in the industry, because we are competitive with every other industry, and we have to treat our staff better, reward them more, but at the end money counts. We have to reward them for working within racing, and that's, I think, where all these other initiatives about working times, you can play about with all that, about flexi time. At the end of the day, horses have to eat, and they're fed. I feed 4 times a day here. Now what usually happens, I'm the one who's doing the last one because I can't get anybody else to do it. And you have to draw people in to commit their whole working day to it. I think the industry would benefit if we did that.
Okay, we were talking earlier before we started doing this. You've got some quite strong opinions on the whip.
Well, on horse welfare, generally, I think there's great issues being made on horse welfare, quite rightly so. And I think unless we address it properly, I think racing will suffer in the long term, because the average person who lives in suburbia, the only animal they come across is the one that the children plays with in the end of his bed. It's and they're not used to animals and working with animals, or having an industry based on animals. And I think that horse welfare is so important, and we were already seeing at Newton Abbot, they frequently have protesters out there lining by the gates there, wanting to ban racing. And here we are, we're in a situation now where there's no proper check on race courses, on the state of the ground. They measure the injuries. Horses that leave the race course, their injuries are picked up by the vet as they go through the gate. They check a horse. If a horse is lame, they mark it down and it goes on a report. I had a horse run last spring. He finished 4th, ran well, walked up onto the lorry. I drove him back. Hour and a quarter up the road, he walked off, and I thought, well, he doesn't look quite right. He had a crack in his his cannon burn, the stress fracture, and we had to have it pinned. Now that injury wasn't picked up. Equally, the majority of tendon injuries, absolutely the majority, you cannot see at the racecourse. You see them later on at night, or the following day, or 10 days later after they've done their first bit of work. Those injuries, which can be caused by the ground being too quick or not reported as it is, patchy ground, they are not being picked up. And I absolutely maintain, I put this forward to the NTF Council who threw it out, that it would be used by the BHA against the industry. I cannot say, unless we sort put our own house in order, others will do it. And we should be reporting injuries so that the BHA could go back to courses and say, this race course, the injury rate is far too high. You are not producing raceable ground. But they won't do it. You know, there's been resistance so far, but I mean, yeah, we had the issues with the national fences, and we kept hammering away at it. And eventually, they changed those to stop the injuries. We must put it right. But equally, on another aspect, racing has been involved in video technology for many years. It's been far ahead of other sports. Now we get tennis, video technology, cricket, rugby, even football have done it. Now racing, yes, we have the stewards get round the block of cameras of television screens in the steward's room, and they watch for rule infringements. They have a rule for how many times the jockey can hit a horse, and the jockey breaks it. Right, they put a fine on it, and what happens? As in the case of Royal Ascot last year, they fined the jockey, they banned the jockey for 9 days, and when asked, the jockey said, "Well, wasn't even counting." That's no way to stop whip infringements, and we've got to stop them. If you took the race away, Sir Mark Prescott is absolutely right. You took the race away, the jockeys would suddenly learn how to count, and it would be better for the horse, and it would give a better impression. And I think that is one of the glaring things that's wrong with racing at the moment. And unless we put our house in order, and both those issues of injuring horses and of horses being hit more often than they should be, it will come back to haunt us. The other thing is, personally, I think the whip as it is should be banned, because it's not a whip. The whip of 30 years ago would mark a horse. The whip today is not a whip, it's an air cushioned stick. They would call it a different name. But say the whip has been banned and call it a baton or something. Because in the perception, like the fox hunting thing, fox hunting's been banned. Has it? Not around here, the packs are still going. But to the ordinary person it's been banned. And they've stopped worrying about it. Those racing whips, they're not whips. The whips in the days of back in the 60s, the 70s, and Graham Thorner was champion, and those sort of people, they had sticks there, and they would draw blood. But these don't today. They've done so much, which has been incredible. But I think just by not calling it the whip, call it something else, and take the heat out of it.
Would you say that racing itself is in good health at the moment?
I wouldn't pass a comment on that. I think there are things that need changing, which I've just said, and they're the ones that I've really been disturbed about, and at the end of the day, I'm a horseman and I look after horses, and I ran my horse in the National, and he hit one of the stakes. This is before the fences were modified. He hit he ploughed through one and wrecked himself, hit his hind suspensory on the top of a stake, and that was him, finished. And a week later I rang up the clerk of the course and said, "I've got every right to tell you want to change something. And you want to change the centre core of the fence. What they've been doing is making them softer and softer and softer because of the fallers, but they'd left the hard core exposed." And I said, "Have you heard of Easy Fix?" "Never heard of them," he said. 3 months later they were trialling them, and they actually put Easy Fix as a core and covered them with fur. Well, at least it stopped the horses being injured. So, it shows that they do respond eventually, but I sometimes think they don't respond quick enough,
Now you've, just to conclude really, you've had a successful career training from here. Is there any unfulfilled ambition that you still got your sights on?
Well, I haven't managed a winner at Cheltenham. We've had some near misses. One year they changed the rule for 48-hour declarations, and they allowed horses the weights to stay the same when the top weight came out. And we ran Howard Death in the county hurdle, and he was well out of the weights. They should have raised the weights £9, and they didn't, and so Sporrazine was left in there £9 lower than he should have been. He beat us ahead. he should have carried £9 more, and he beat his head. We were 50-1, and that should have been my Cheltenham winner. It's still written about today. Charlie Mann was incensed about that, I remember at the time. But what can you do? Their letters been in the Racing Post years after about that. The following year they changed the rule back, you know. And we had Lord Sam got turned over there, and Caranja was at the start with, he'd won the big bumper at Newbury, and Nina Carberry came over. She was a £7 claiming amateur, 17-year-old. She came over to ride my two at Newbury that day, and Caranja in the big bumper there, which she won, and she rode Howard F in the what it was then the Schweppes, and finished fourth, beaten 6 lengths, and the horse had never run like that before. But anyway, so Nina then rode Caranja in the champion bumper. He was second to one. He was a second favourite, 5-1, second favourite. And they had 3 starters down there, and they managed to let one horse whip round at the start and knocked her straight off the saddle. And that was it. Finished. That was disappointing. So I haven't been the luckiest of trainers at Cheltenham. I've had several other been placed, but so it would be great to have a Cheltenham winner. But there we are. We'll take what comes.
Brilliant. Just finally, I'm interested. A lot of racecourses, trainers are sponsored by feed merchants or even bookmakers. You're sponsored by a hotel, the Dartnall in Tiverton. What is your connection there?
Well, the owner, Claire Carter, has been a friend for years, and we met her racing, and we started going there. It's a very good hotel, and it's very popular, becoming increasingly so. And so Claire's been a great supporter of the yard for years now, and in fact we're just naming a horse after the hotel called Dartnall Hero. He's due to be named shortly. He's very well bred. He's by Sageberg, and a very good pedigree, and so we're something to look forward to, we hope.
Great stuff. You heard it here first. Victor Dartnall, thank you very much.
Right, okay.